So welcome to SE Scholars, Understanding the INCOSE Certification Process. Basically what I'm going to do is go through this like 3-step process on getting certified. But before we start, we're going to talk a little bit about myself and INCOSE as well as we're going through this. All right. Okay. First of all, you may want to know who I am. I'm Paul B. Martin, of course. And I've got an ESEP, which is the Expert System Engineering Professional. I got that a few years back. I did have the CSEP, and I did have to go through the exam, which is one of the reasons why I actually started this course, because back when I was starting, there was nothing on the market at that time. Since then, I've gotten a CompTIA CTT Plus, which is a technical trainer, certified technical trainer as well. I have a BS in general engineering, a master's in system engineering. I've been working for decades with DoD, General Electric, and several DoD areas, from the Navy to the Army to the intelligence and industries community. So, but I've also, for the past almost 12 years, been an adjunct professor for UMBC, teaching their graduate level course for system engineering. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So I've been teaching this whole INCOSE SEP exam prep course since 2009. So that's who I am. Let's talk a little bit more about what we're going to talk about. And first of all, agenda-wise, we're going to talk about what is INCOSE and just give you kind of an overview of the certification aspect that INCOSE has. And then we'll get into the certification process. Now, I break it down into 3 steps: learn the handbook, take the exam, and fill out the application. And after that, you'll be certified. But there are some post-certification things you need to worry about. We'll talk about that as well. And of course, we'll be open for questions at the end of the webinar. So let's get right into it. I have a lot of slides to get through. I'll try not to dwell on any of them a lot. You can get a copy of these slides, and I'll show you where to do that as we go along. All right, so what is INCOSE? Look, it's an organization, the International Council on System Engineering. It's a non-for-profit organization. It's been around since 1990, which sounds like, wow, that's a long time, but actually kind of new. IEEE's been around a lot longer, and so has PMI and some others been around a long time. But INCOSE, their main purpose is to develop and disseminate that aspect of system engineering that's interdisciplinary and practices the actual art of creating successful systems. And so what INCOSE is doing, promoting that for professionals from an educational, networking, and career advancement point of view, is what they're doing. They do have a mission. It's to address complex societal and technical challenges by enabling and promoting the advance of system engineering and system approaches. They really would like to build a better world through the systems approach, and that's kind of their vision. Actually, there's a new vision document out there for 2035 that it'll be worth going to the INCOSE website and downloading that. So they do have some work products that they've developed throughout the years. They have a symposium every year, and it's in July. This year, in 2022, it'll be in Detroit. If you go, please try to go. I'm going to be there selling my wares. I'm also giving a tutorial on what the handbook is all about. They also have a journal for system engineering. And the Insight magazine's kind of their the INCOSE International, the actual aspects about the organization. It's an organizational organization, and it's also practitioner. One nice thing about Insight magazine versus the journal, Insight's more from the practitioner standpoint, whereas the journal is very academic in terms of what they do. The other things we've worked with IEEE to come up with this systems engineering body of knowledge, or SEP. And then, and they also have developed a language for systems for modeling. It's called SysML, and it's by the Object Management Group. And of course, there's the handbook. Now, the handbook is fairly important because you actually have to use the handbook in relationship to this next product, which is the certification program that INCOSE has. And they have a program that's actually multi-level. As you can see here, there's one called ASEP, one called CSEP, and one called ESEP. And what they do is they're using these multi-level things to tell people and recognize you as an individual, what is your knowledge experience as a system engineer. And they will certify you kind of separate from any other organization. So it's kind of nice. You're not like tied to your work with a certification or tied to a school, which may give you a certification. This is certification that's independent. We'll talk about what certification means in a few seconds here. But there are some benefits that this system engineering professional, that's what SEP means, program provides that INCOSE provides. One is that independent assessment of your knowledge and your thing from an individual standpoint, right? So it's a very portable standard of recognition that occurs. Let me do this real quick so that you can see it. So it's this standard of recognition that has occurred. But from a community, you now have a standard that identifies and helps you develop system engineer professionals, which is kind of nice, and establishes this book of knowledge that we've talked about, especially from the handbook. But the SEP is fairly important too. Organizations and institutions have a way to actually measure their professionals within their midst, the knowledge they have. And it's kind of this independent evaluation of their people that are working system engineering within their organization. So let me give you a quick overview. One, I've already mentioned this. What is a certification? It's that confirmation of your individual competency, from an education, experience, and knowledge standpoint. Very formal, issued by organization, and it's voluntary, but it may be a qualifier for a position. That's what a certification is. Not to be confused with a certificate. Okay, that just says you finished something, right? It's like I took a course in college, they give you a certificate. Actually, if you take my course, which I'm going to explain later, I can give you a certificate that says you finished my course. But that doesn't mean you're certified, right? It just means you actually attended and completed an educational thing, of course. And it's not a license to do system engineering. License is formal permission by the state to carry on some kind of business and profession. System engineering doesn't have licensing, but engineering does. So there is professional engineers that can be licensed by a state. And that's not what this is. So again, a certification is looking and assessing your competency in terms of what you are. Now, you've probably seen these in other organizations, right? Program Management Institute, which has been around a lot longer than INCOSE. They have the famous PMP, which is the project management professional. And a lot of times contracts ask that a PMP be in charge of a project. There's another one, International Information Systems of Security Certification Consortium. and that can give you the Certified Information System Security Professional, or SISSP. IEEE even has one, and they have one dealing with software development. Now, and so INCOSE has a similar thing like PMI in that it has actual levels that talk to it. And each level covers whatever breadth of system engineering that level covers. And so one of the first ones it covers is the Associated System Engineering Professional. That's where it's they're just really looking to see if you have knowledge in system engineering. And then there's the Certified System Engineering Professional. They're looking to see if you have at least 5 years experience doing system engineering. And then a lot further in your career, like maybe 25 or 20 to 25 years plus, you have knowledge, experience, and leadership, you'll have your ESEP. So not every CSEP will be eventually an ESEP, but there are, ones who are leaders in the profession. So it's for every stage of your career. And actually, you can enter, depending on where you are in your career, you can enter the certification you need to. It doesn't have to be, I need to be an ASEP first and then a CSEP and an ESEP, although that is a way that you can go about doing it, as you can see by this line here. But if you've been a professional for 10, 15 years, you may want to go ahead and go for the CSEP. Or if you've been a system engineer for 20 some years, then maybe ESEP is the way to go. So enter whenever makes sense for you as a system engineer. Now let's look at kind of the numbers that are involved. I think INCOSE has about maybe 13 or 14,000 members so far. But from a certification standpoint, we have a little over 4,000 total SEPs. So as you can see, this is a very niche, I guess might want to say. There is growth throughout the years because they started in 2005. Here it is about 15 years later, and they've got about 4,000. In case you want to know, this is when I started and got my CSEP back in 2007. So I was one of the first few years I came on board, and then I got my ESEP just about 5 years ago or so. So actually 10 years ago. That's right. It's 2022. So 10 years ago I got my ESEP. So, and I've been teaching since 2009. So actually some of these CSEPs in here would probably be people I've taught and stuff. But, if you were to compare the PMP to the SEP, you'll find that the PMP is huge. It's got like 900,000 certified program managers. 900,000. It's like almost a million. You throw a rock, you're going to hit a program manager. But SEPs are those rare individuals that actually certify their system engineering expense. There's only like 4,000. We're just a little pimple down here, in terms of comparing to what PMP is. So it is a nice certification in the fact that it is so rare as you're going into there. Now let's get into what each one is, what each level is. The ASEP is the Associate System Engineering Professional. This is very junior or a maturing system engineer, very limited experience, but they can certify the knowledge requirements by taking the exam. A lot of people ask me, is the exam for the ASEP the same for the CSEP? Yes, it is, because both of them are based on the handbook. And so for the ASEP, all they have to do is study the handbook, pass the exam, put in an application that consists of your name and email address and money, and lo and behold, you're an ASEP. So the ASEP, and they'll allow you to stay in ASEP for at least 5 years, because the way they see it is this could occur right at the when you get out of college and your first job become an ASEP. And then as you start getting more experience, you can go ahead and put in your application for your CSEP. You do not need to take the exam again. You take it once for the ASEP. You don't have to take it again. All right. So the process for the ASEP, just as I said, learn the handbook, right? Pay your fee, take the test, pass it, and then join INCOSE and submit your application. So there is a cost to all that, but eventually you'll have a 5-year certification and you become an ASEP. Now, a lot of you would probably be going for the CSEP. Now, the CSEP is where you've been a system engineer for 5 or more years. You have to show your system engineering work experience, okay, and you also need to show, of course, you have to pass the exam, but you also need some references, about 3 to 5 references to actually attest to the fact that you did indeed have system engineering experience. By the way, both the CSEP and the ASEP requires INCOSE membership. Actually, all 3 certifications require you to become a member for you to do this. So this one, membership is required. A little different in that you only have a 3-year window to keep your certification active. So after 3 years, you have to submit a form that says this is how many PDUs I've accomplished. If you don't, you'll lose your certification, or even your ASEP after 5 years if you don't show that you've grown from a PDU perspective. All right. So this one's kind of the same, but a little different in the fact that the application is a little more difficult, and you need references. So you go through the same process where you learn the handbook and take the exam and pass it, but then you have to actually develop your application here, and then actually get your references to submit their reference, the reference for you. Both of those are compared, and you get certified at that point once they see indeed you meet the qualifications of the application. So that's the way. So remember, I told you as an ASEP, you might want to do that first and then take your time, because the application development takes so much more effort. So one of the things a lot of my students find is easier, because all you're doing is giving your name and email address. You can get your ASEP right away, and then maybe take a year or so to develop your application. It actually does take quite a long time. And I'll explain that to you when we get in there. If you have any questions on how to work through the applications, we'll get to that within this webinar. So now the expert is what I am, and that's for senior leaders. They actually are recognized not only for their work experience and accomplishments, but they really want to see a leadership aspect to it. So the application is a little more rigorous, and as you can see, and again, you need to be an INCOSE member, but as you can see here, this application is fairly rigorous. You do need your references put in as well, and you will be actually called up, and then they'll actually talk to you about it. So you'll be interviewed. Not only will you be interviewed, but at least 2 of your advocates or your references over here will be called up as well. So they'll interview those as well. So this certification, actually, what's nice about this one is there's no time limit. As long as you're a INCOSE member, you're an ESEP. Okay. So one of these things, the organization has some streamlined, some organizations have streamlined certification processes. And actually, I think there's a question here. I was going to ask how difficult it would be for a non-engineer to be certified. And I'm going to get into that when I get into filling out the application. So that's a very good question. So we'll definitely get to that in terms of what it means from an education standpoint, how you would go about doing this. All right. The certification process itself, there are some companies, and these companies kind of help their CSEPs applications out. And basically the Streamlined, and you can check them out by going to the this link here, which you'll be able to get to when you download my slides. You can go in there and actually see who your representative is. Now, sometimes they have an agreement with INCOSE that the company itself will review the application and make sure that it's fit to be submitted. So that way, when it gets to INCOSE, they kind of have a good sense that this application was looked at and it's ready to be reviewed in earnest. A lot of times they get applications, they get reviewed and they get rejected and sent back, and they have to be modified and sent. And that can take INCOSE quite a bit of effort to do that. So what's nice about this Streamlined certification process for these companies is they can make it go a lot faster for INCOSE. Because of that, INCOSE kind of gives them this quid pro quo thing where you only need 2 references instead of 3. So that's a fairly significant improvement and stuff. But you should ask your representative on what the agreement means, and usually you have to work with them anyway to have them review your application. And then there's academic equivalency. This is kind of neat. The only issue I have with this is it kind of goes against my course, because I have a course that teaches how to pass the exam. But what's nice about this academic equivalency is if you're going through a program where you're getting, like, let's say your master's in system engineering or even a bachelor's, okay? And all of these have system engineering degrees, okay? As you're going through certain courses and within those academic institutions, they've worked with INCOSE to say, hey, if they pass this class, it's equivalent to passing the exam. So if you're actually within one of these, you would actually be able to pass this course. INCOSE will give you credit for the exam, and then you can submit your application. You don't have to take the exam. Of course, you have to pass the course, and you have to be part of the academic institutions, the actual thing. One interesting thing as I said, I've been with UMBC for quite a long time. I actually have their fundamentals or their principles class. I actually developed that using the material that I teach in my class that I'm going to tell you about for passing the exam. And because of that, they actually do have academic equivalency for my UMBC course. Okay, let's talk about the process. There are actually 3 steps to the process. 1, you have to learn the handbook. 2, you need to take the exam. 3, you need to prepare for the application. So let's talk what it means to learn the handbook. Let's see if this thing, hopefully I didn't. There we go. Okay, that was supposed to go real pretty like this. Okay, so to learn the handbook, I actually have a prep course that you can take because it's totally based on the INCOSE System Engineering Handbook, which is over 300 pages and talks about 31 processes. So this is a course that you can sign up for. And I think my moderator will give you a link in the chat so that you can see and go to and buy the course if you want to buy it. But you may want to wait until I give you this. I'm going to give you a discount code at the end here. So part of this Learn the Handbook is the aspect of the handbook itself. I really make a big deal out of this because a lot of people, when they take, sometimes I give the course, they wonder why I don't deviate or give too many examples or go into other aspects. The problem is it's all in the handbook, and that's the main reference that's used for the examination. So because of that, that's how I teach it. Now, because of that, you need to get the handbook. Now, of course, you need to be an INCOSE member for these certifications. So you might as well sign up and become a member. If you do, you have access to a free PDF version for free. And I show you how to actually get that. And actually, I show you how to get that with the course portal that I gave you. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get there. So you can either buy the book at a significant discount if you're an INCOSE member, or you can print it out, the PDF, go to like Staples and print it out that way. Now keep in mind though, is you don't need to be an INCOSE member to take the exam. So because of that, you can't get the PDF, so you'll have to buy the handbook from Wiley to do that. So either take the PDF and get it at Staples, or go to the Wiley store. You can get a member discount, but if you're not a member, you have to buy it full price at about $80 or so. 83 or something like that. All right, so take my course, well, get the handbook, and once you have the handbook, take my course. You can study at your own pace. It's kind of a virtual boot camp. I've actually recorded all my lectures as a boot camp. All the lectures are comprehensive. I do it within 5 modules, 5 days, right? And what I do is cover the entire handbook with lectures that do that. So this shows you what one of my lectures would look like. I think I can repeat that like that. So as you can see, that it's pretty good, the recordings and stuff, and you can watch them at your convenience. Each one is like a hour and a half. Some are a little longer than that, but each one covers a section in the handbook and all. So what I do is I teach my comprehensive process flow diagram, and as I say down here, yeah, it's complicated, but so is system engineering if you think about it. So we take you through all 31 processes. As a matter of fact, here, let me get this through. As you can see, I'm building up the chart, starting with the organizational process enabling, going into agreements, going into project or technical management, and ending with the technical processes here. So I actually teach the handbook inside out. Of course, I do chapter 1 through 3, but I also teach chapter 8, 7, 6, 5, and 4 in that direction, so that when you get to chapter 4, I teach it last right here for the technical processes. So one of the last things, I start with chapter 7 for the life cycle models over here, and end with the perform disposal, or 4.14 for the thing. So I build up this chart, so by the time you're done, you actually look at the chart and go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Pretty sure it will. And it gives you, one of the reasons I kind of push for this chart is the context it brings. The one thing, when you read the handbook, you'll get what they call IPO, or input, process, output diagrams. But the diagrams are individual, just one process by itself, and it has inputs coming in, outputs going out, and it doesn't tell you where they go. So my diagram does, because I followed through where every output and input and where they interact, right? So you can actually, the whole idea of my chart is to give you that context that we're going to do. I also, with this web portal I'm going to show you, is I give you a bunch of exam questions. And you can take these as many times as you want. There'll be different exams, different quizzes each time. So it's about 587 questions. So it's a good way to actually take and practice for the exam. Now, the way I wrote these is I kind of wrote these questions out of my fever brain by going through the handbook. And that's why I have 587 questions. They're not based on what you'll see when you do the exam. The exam has their own questions. I don't know what they are. But I'm trying to get you familiar with the exam, and I'm trying to get you comfortable with questions about the handbook itself. All right. Actually, you kind of may be wondering where I came up with the structure of the handbook and all. INCOSE is actually very forthright about how to do that. They have actually some sample questions. Unfortunately, these were taken very poorly in a beta exam they did several years back, but they do represent the format and content of the actual exam. So you can look at this and see, okay, and basically what they do, actually, they're very straightforward. They say the examination questions are multiple choice, and all the correct answers are selected from possible answers. You only receive credit when you answer all the questions correctly. A typical question will have 5 possible answers where only 3 are correct. And this gives you an example, right? Right here. Which 3 of the following methods are express functional behavior? Actually, I wonder if I should let you guys try to work that and actually send me answers. You know what? I would love to do that, but unfortunately, this may really take this a lot longer if I do that. So let's do this. It looks for functional behavior, right? So I would look for answers that have functional aspects to it. So behavior is one, functional flow, and functional modeling. So I would say B, E, and F. So that one would probably be a little too easy, right? This one would be harder because it's justifying configuration management. So does it facilitate communication? Does it force change of evaluations? Does it prevent requirement changes? Does it control requirement changes? Does it encourage requirement changes? So it looks like these 3 are kind of the thing. I think it does facilitate communication and does force the evaluation of any changes. So A and B is correct. Now you kind of wonder, well, what about these 3? So you don't want to prevent, right? So it's probably not C. And this is what always happens when you go through these. You'll say, oh, I was able to strike out this obvious one that's not the answer. I found 2 that are obviously the answer. Oh, but wait, there's 2 left. What is it? Which one is it? Sometimes you're like, I better flip a coin on this, 50-50 or something. But I believe it's trying to control, not encourage. Okay? Encouragement has to come from leadership, not this process. So I believe it's A, B, and D. Let's see if we were right. Yes. Okay. Actually, when you watch my my course, you'll see me go through these exam questions as we do it. Okay. I also have a study guide. I'm actually going to provide that to you when you go to the web portal. You can download it. Basically what it is all the IPO diagrams, and I actually have the actual activities in there as well. It's a good way to look through all 31 process, kind of look at them real quick before you take the exam. All right, all of this is in Canvas. So everything's in Canvas. And when you go in there, one of the things I did want to show you is the Canvas itself. So let me real quick show you what it looks like. So when you get into Canvas here, now right now I'm showing you the getting into this webinar that we just talked about. But I do have a bunch of pages that are going to show you some of the things I'm going to show you about application help. I do have a sample quiz from my course and some testimonials about taking my course, as well as my own experience in getting the SEP. And we also have the handbook. And when you go into the actual, I think it's the sample quiz up here, you can actually download the study guide as you're doing that. So I think you'll find that fairly helpful as we're doing this. All right. So that's learning the handbook. Let's think about what it means to take the exam. So the exam has changed recently. What they've done is they've opened it to be where members and non-members can take it. So it's really a matter of you submitting or registering to take the test, giving the organization that gives the test some money, and then you take the test. And it's all done with your own laptop now. So I suggest, if you do this, is you can actually order my class, kind of figure out what is the best way for you to study. Like maybe it might take you 2 months or something like that. And you schedule your exam 2 months ahead of time and put the line in the sand. Know that you're going to take it at that time. So you register online, okay? And there is a link within INCOSE. Because you are not a member, they do want you to still register for the website so that you can get into this page here where you can hit the open registration. You click on it and it sends you an email. So it's all paid for online, this proctored exam. It's $80, by the way. So because this is a computer exam, you can take it within the privacy of your own home or wherever. It will be proctored, so there'll be a person there virtually while you're taking the exam, and they'll be watching you as you take the exam. They don't want to see you looking around or flipping up my diagram to help you out. I mean, they'll see that, and they'll probably stop you at that point. So there's actually a whole aspect of how to take the exam that you can download, a testing guide to give you one things. Now, I believe they give you a blank screen that you can write on or type on. If you could use that, a lot in the old days, they used to give you a piece of paper and pencil, and you'd be able to do that within this enclosed room. And now that you're in your own house, you have to do it on the computer. But trying to actually redo my diagram, that some people have tried that, and it's helpful to them and stuff. Now, the exam itself has not changed, even though they've changed in terms of how to actually take the exam. In terms of, it used to be with where you were in a room and it was enclosed and you had to go to a separate location. Now you can do this computer online thing, but the exam itself has not changed. It's still 120 minutes long. It's 2 hours long. It's 2 hours long with 120 questions, which gives you a minute per question to do, and you get a pass-fail results almost immediately. All right. By the way, there are some pencil and paper exams. They usually have them around symposiums or conferences, and if one is near you, or you can ask your INCOSE chapter if they would actually have one or host one. They would have to work with the certification office. I believe they need an ESEP in order to proctor it. But they're a lot cheaper. They're $30. Again, you do not need to be a member, and it's done with pencil and paper. It takes a little longer, of course, to figure out if you passed or failed. Okay, so you learned the handbook. Yay. You took the exam. Now is the hard part, preparing the application. Okay, and it is a hard part. Now, for the ESEP, it's not so hard because you put your name, email, and sign it, and you're done. Okay, so the ESEP is a real simple one. The CSEP's a little harder. It's 11 pages long. You need to verify your education, verify your experience, and get your references together. So a lot of people misunderstand how long it takes. It could take up to 20 hours. So, I mean, that's like 3 or 4 weekends, if you're working during the week to try to get this done. So that's why for this step, you kind of concentrate on filling out the application. Fortunately, you already know you passed the exam, so you're good to go. But you don't want to wait too long on this because they're only giving you a year to do this. Fortunately, it shouldn't take you more than a month to work this out. One of the issues that comes into play is not verifying your application, education. So this goes back to someone asking, can a non-engineer get a certified? The question is, do they do system engineering, right? The hard part is verifying your experience. So we'll talk about that. But verifying your education, you just kind of scan a copy of or photograph your transcript or diploma, and that should be enough. So the one thing I think I missed on this is there are ways that you can, we're going to get into this when we get into experience. Let me do that. Verify your experience. So what we're going to do here is look at your you should have about 5 years of professional level system engineering experience. And you have to show that you had 1 year experience for at least 3 or more of the 14 functional areas I'm about to show you. Okay? So what you want to look at is what are your experiences and are they diverse? So that's what they're looking for a CSEP. So these are all the 14 level experiences. You have technical competencies. A lot of these come, of course, out of Chapter 4. And they have things like requirements engineering, architecture and design, analysis, verification and validation, or as some people like to call them, test engineers, right? Or even operational maintenance might be involved. And then you have what's called management competencies, system engineering management. That's things like planning, monitoring and control, acquisition and supply, which is your agreement processes. And by the way, a lot of these are Chapter 4, Chapter 5, and 6, right? Risk opportunities and risk and opportunity management. So if you've done any of those, even CM, those are allowed. And then you have things like support competencies, specialty engineering, which is all out of Chapter 10. So when you look at Chapter 10, if you've done some of that, you could probably work that. Now remember, we're looking for being a year at least in at least 3 of these. And then you can, the other 2 years can be split between other things and stuff. Then you have to allow other, and then you have other. So, and that's one that if you do provide that, INCOSE has to come back to you and agree with that. All right. In the write-up in Appendix A, they actually explain how to write, how Appendix A is your filling, this is how you fill out the form. And in there, they give you an attachment which actually explains what each competency is. Okay, what is requirements engineering? What is analysis? So what you need to do is read this very carefully, because what you'll be doing, and it's 2 pages as you can see, requirements engineering all the way to other down here that we have. You have to read this very carefully, because what you'll be doing is taking your experience, your resume, so to speak, and cutting it up. And you'll be saying to yourself, okay, how much requirements engineering did I do? So basically this is a good way to look at it. For instance, and these are options. These are like, what is your experience here, right? Like, for instance, you could actually look at your experiences and say, I've only done 3 of those things. So I did CM, did some architecture work, and I ended up being a requirements engineer at the end. Boom. But as long as you did 1 year each, which for even requirements, you did 3 years, so that's 1 year or more. So option 1 is actually, I did the minimum, right? I only did 3 of these things, but lo and behold, for 5 years I did them, and I have a year each for out of those 5 years. Or you may find yourself, I did CM, architecture, requirements, and I wound up being a test engineer. That's fine too. So, and then all the way down the road that we're doing there. So, but the key is this. Do you have 3, a year each in at least 3 of these things? That's really what they're looking for. And you'll find that can happen when you fill out your application. So first of all, you have to download the form, right? You go to certification forms on the website and you download them. And you get your application, your Form 2, which is your instructions. That has Appendix A in it. Your instruction letter to your references. And then the references, your people that are filling out the references, they need to fill out a reference to endorse you, right? So my point is read and understand all 15 work areas and functions. By the way, you should have a good sense of what they are, because you just went through my course and passed the exam. So that should give you a good sense of what you're trying to do. And even if you feel you're not doing system engineering at that time, it may count if it falls in one of the other 15 work areas. So read and understand all your system engineering work areas, and then take each one and break them up into those functions. So, and then estimate the amount of times in month you spent for each function. So what you'll find is, of course, while you're working, you're doing some CM over here, some requirements over here, and you're helping with, an agreement or something as you're doing that. So, but you're doing that within the year. Well, how much time did you spend within that year on each of those? So if you said for requirements, I only did like 15%, well, out of 12 months, that's only a short amount of time, right? Versus maybe 30% for the other and 75% for the other. So you can figure out the months that you will wind up with. The whole reason you want to do that organization is because you start by explaining to them how long you were in that position, right? So here, I was here for 23 months. And what they want to know is how much did you work in each of the functional areas. Okay, so notice here, I worked requirements engineer for 3 months. Okay, and I worked technical planning for 4. And then if you keep down, I worked one for 12 and another one for 14. So, but what happens is that transfers to the requirements matrix here. And as you can see, I've got the requirements up here, 3. I got planning here, 4. And what happens, and what they want to do is when they add all this up, it better not be more than the months I was there, right? So they're going to double check you as you're working this. So you can't say, oh, I worked these 3 things in 12 months, so I'm going to put 12, 12, 12. No, it's 12 months split up between the 3, right? So, and they should add up to 12 months. So what they'll do is they'll total the whole thing for your positions and see where you stand. Now notice in green, I met the 12 and over. Okay, so there were only 4 of these that I was able to meet 12 or over. Everything else was below. So this is kind of the key to making sure you meet the criteria. And basically what you can do is fill out each position and go to this matrix and say, well, am I 12 and over, and do I have 3? Once you have that occurring and you meet that criteria, you can stop. You don't have to keep going. I've had some of my students, they go to like position 6. I'm going to get this done, and they've got like 7 greens. It's like you actually could have stopped at position 4. You didn't need to keep going as you're doing that. So keep that in mind as you're doing that and stuff. All right. And of course, you download your certification forms. And there are some sample forms too, which is kind of nice. That'll show you how to fill out the application as well. All right. The one thing that I'm missing. Okay, let me go back. I was kind of hoping it would work through that. When you fill out the application, in the instructions here, they actually will talk to you about what your education experience is. And it looks like I missed that. All right. So in the application, it's 11 pages long. They will ask you, do you have your education that you need? But they do split it up where they're like, if you don't have a technical degree, you can actually add more experience. So notice we said you needed 5 years, right? So if you have a non-technical degree, you can actually add 5 more years to your experience and say, I have 10 years experience. And they'll actually look at that and they'll give you credit for that. And you can become a CSEP for that. But you have to have a non-technical degree, okay? What if you don't have a degree at all? You got high school diploma and that's it. Guess what? They will let you, but you do need to add 10 more years. So you have to show you've done 15 years of system engineering, and then they'll give you a CSEP. Of course, give it another 5 years, you can actually show that you are ESEP capable at that time. But they will let you get in if you are what you feel as a non-engineer. Now, if you're doing system engineering, you are a system engineer. So, and what's funny though is you can actually get your ASEP, pass the exam, and be a non-engineer, but go into system engineering later to get your CSEP. So that is interesting that you could do that because they're not looking for your education at that point. All right, applications. Applications advocate. So these are your references. You need 3. They need to cover those 5 years, and they need to fill out an endorsement form, and they email that to INCOSE. All your SEs have to have system engineering knowledge. It's great, and I know I've done this. Your program manager, they're the ones that run the program. You really want to, have them endorse your system engineering prowess. Well, here's the problem. If they can't prove that they're good at system engineering, then INCOSE won't accept their endorsement. So you do need system engineers to endorse you. Now, fortunately, most program managers that are really good were previously system engineers in their old life. So ask them when they fill out the form if they could maybe make a huge deal out of their system engineering, not their program management skills. Okay? So I actually, when I filled out my application and when it was rejected, it was because I had my program manager go in there and say he did, $5 million project and did all this great program management stuff. And they said, don't care. We're not listening to you. And I'm like, what? So I had to redo it. So, okay. let's, and I got some emails for you. Basically what you would do. Now, of course, you can show your references, your application. And remember in your application, you actually, and actually I should have showed you this. Let's go back here. Notice here, when I fill out the application, not only am I filling out the months, I'm actually describing, right, what I'm doing. And hopefully you're describing it in accordance to Appendix A, that you're using kind of the same language that you're doing and that you're working. So you're describing your role that you're doing this. So you can actually, for your advocates, you can actually send them an email or send them your application to show them your writing. Now, the one thing you don't want them to do is copy and paste that and say, yeah, this is what they did, because the INCOSE reviewers will notice that and they'll say, hey, that's not good. So you may, in your email, just kind of reword that experience in a way that makes more sense for the reviewer. And of course, if they cut and paste that, that's up to them. But at least you give them a good sense of what you did, all right, with them, all right? All right. So you prepared the application. That's done now, okay? So once you do that, you are done. They'll come back to you and say if you're good to go or not. And if you are, congratulations. You actually learned the handbook. You actually passed the exam and you filled out the application correctly. Congratulations. You're a certified system engineering professional. It's great. But there is an issue, right? So after you have that for 3 years, and you could lose it if you don't meet the requirements after 3 years. And basically what that is PDUs. So it's valid for 3 years for CSEP, 5 for ASEP, but you need to show within those 3 or 5 years that you have 120 professional development units. And that's pretty high, because PMI, they only need 60 for 3 years. And I'm sure INCOSE looked at PMI and said, we could do better than that. We're going to double it. So it is a lot of effort to go about doing this. But, you know, if you're taking perhaps college courses or things like that, they can grow. As a matter of fact, they have a list. Again, you can download this. One thing, as a member, you already get five PDUs a year. But you should probably go to the local chapter and get maybe a PDU, one PDU a month by going to the lecture that's there. Or you can actually watch some lectures online and stuff like that. All that comes into play. Another great way to get your 120 PDUs is actually volunteer in a role. And it's right here. Volunteer activities in the community or nonprofit, such as INCOSE. And they limit it, volunteer in school, technical, up here. No limit. I'm sorry, I meant to say this one. Professional Technical Society. Doesn't have to be INCOSE. It could be IEEE or something like that. Or even one of their working groups. Or going to the symposium. So that's where you can really, I mean, if you work in a working group, there's no limit. You can probably get all 120. And the same with becoming a volunteer, maybe working on the board of a local INCOSE. Or going to the symposium for a week. You know, that's a good 72 hours there. All right. By the way, you can write articles and stuff like that. They give you PDUs as well. All right. And of course, this is on the certification forms. You go to the renewal. And basically what it is, if you look down here, it's a log. So it's a log. I would say take that log, put it in a Google Doc, and keep track of it. Believe me, after 3 years, you don't want to struggle and go, what was that course I went to? You know, how many hours? That was a lot of effort for me to get my CSEP renewed. All right, we are now at the end of this thing, and Anne, I need you to get ready. Before we end up here, I want you to know that all of this you can find on the certification resources page. Courtney Wright is the program manager for certification. Again, you saw that PMI had 900,000. We only have a little over 4,000 certified individuals. So it is kind of a niche thing, and not that I want you to think she's not busy, but she will answer your email. I mean, they're pretty good about that. So if you have any questions, especially about, is my degree technical enough? You know, that's a good question some people have. Send it to the email certification office here via email, and they'll answer you. They'll let you know. So it's a good dialogue. Well, let's not delay any questions, please. There was a question about references and what to do with them, especially if they've moved on or and unfortunately, there's not much around that. You're going to have to contact them if you can. As much. I've actually had to find a retired individual in order to certify, to endorse my system engineering prowess. And he was retired. And believe me, even though you're retired, you're busy. And he was. And it took me 3 or 4 months to get a hold of him. So that's kind of the struggle you have to go through. You may have to look for others as you're going about doing that. I know that's not very helpful, but unfortunately their criteria is pretty solid, and you need to try to work through that. Don't believe I have any more slides. I want to thank everybody for coming. Remember, sign up for my class and use that endorsement code. This has been very fun. I'm really glad you were able to be part of it.